Drive through Kensington today, and you'll see a neighborhood that looks like it's been through a war. Tents line the sidewalks, people stumble through the streets in various states of consciousness, and the evidence of human suffering is impossible to ignore. But this isn't some distant, war-torn country. This is Philadelphia, one of America's historic cities, and what's happening in Kensington represents one of the most visible and devastating community crises in the United States today. Kensington wasn't always like this. This neighborhood has a story, one that stretches back generations. It was once a thriving working-class community, filled with factories, close-knit families, and the kind of neighborhood pride that built America. But somewhere along the way, things went terribly wrong. The factories closed, jobs disappeared, and into that vacuum rushed something far more destructive: drugs. Not just any drugs, but some of the most addictive and deadly substances known to humanity. Today, Kensington has become synonymous with America's opioid epidemic. It's ground zero, the epicenter, the place where the crisis is most visible and most devastating. Walk down Kensington Avenue and you'll see what unchecked addiction looks like when it takes over an entire community. You'll see people who've lost everything: their homes, their families, their health, their dignity. You'll see a neighborhood that's lost its identity, its safety, its hope. But here's the thing about Kensington that doesn't always make the news. It's still full of people who care. Residents who've lived here for decades and refuse to give up. Nonprofit organizations working tirelessly to save lives and restore hope. Community leaders fighting for real solutions, not just band-aids. And people in recovery who are proving every single day that change is possible, that redemption is real, that a brighter future isn't just a pipe dream. This essay is about all of that. It's about how we got here, what's really going on, and most importantly, what it's going to take to fix it. Because Kensington's crisis didn't happen overnight, and it won't be solved overnight either. But it can be solved. It must be solved. And understanding the full picture, the history, the causes, the impact, and the potential solutions, is where that process has to begin. A forgotten past, a fading present. To understand Kensington's present, you have to understand its past. And that past is a lot more impressive than most people realize today. Kensington's story begins in the 19th century, when it was one of the most important industrial neighborhoods in America. This wasn't some backwater. This was where things were made. Textile mills, manufacturing plants, factories of all kinds lined the streets. The neighborhood earned the nickname, the workshop of the world, because of its incredible industrial output. People came from all over: Irish immigrants, Polish families, Puerto Rican communities, all drawn by the promise of good jobs and a better life. And for a long time, that promise was real. Kensington was a place where you could graduate high school, walk into a factory, and start earning a decent living. You could buy a house, raise a family, send your kids to local schools, and retire with a pension. It wasn't glamorous, but it was solid. It was the American dream in its most practical, achievable form. The neighborhood had character back then. Corner stores where everyone knew your name. Churches and community centers that served as anchors for the social fabric. Streets where kids could play and neighbors looked out for each other. Kensington had problems, sure. What working-class urban neighborhood doesn't? But it had something more important: stability, community, and hope. Then came deindustrialization. Starting in the 1950s and accelerating through the 1970s and 80s, the factories started closing. Companies moved operations overseas where labor was cheaper, or they simply went out of business, unable to compete in a changing economy. One by one, the mills shut down. The manufacturing plants closed their doors, and the jobs disappeared. When those jobs left, they took more than just paychecks with them. They took purpose, they took structure, they took the economic foundation that had held the community together for generations. What was left behind was a neighborhood full of people who'd built their lives around industries that no longer existed, in an economy that had no place for them. As economic opportunity drained away, other problems rushed in to fill the void. Property values plummeted, crime increased, people who had options started moving out, and the neighborhood's tax base eroded further. Schools deteriorated, public services declined. Kensington entered a downward spiral that seemed impossible to stop. By the 1990s and 2000s, Kensington had become a very different place. The proud industrial neighborhood had transformed into one of Philadelphia's most distressed areas. Poverty was rampant, unemployment was sky high. The physical infrastructure, buildings, streets, public spaces, was crumbling. And into this environment of desperation and hopelessness, drugs found fertile ground. Today's Kensington is almost unrecognizable from its industrial heyday. Where factories once stood, there are now vacant lots and abandoned buildings. Where workers once streamed out at shift change, people now wander in the fog of addiction. The neighborhood that was once defined by what it produced is now defined by what it's lost. But here's what's important to remember. Kensington's decline wasn't inevitable. It wasn't some natural disaster or act of God. It was the result of specific economic policies, systemic neglect, and the failure of institutions to adapt to changing circumstances. And that means it can be reversed. The bones of that old community are still there. Some of the old residents remain, still holding on, still believing that better days can return. The question is whether we have the will and the wisdom to help them rebuild. Center of the crisis. When public health officials, journalists, and addiction experts talk about the opioid epidemic in America, they inevitably end up talking about Kensington. And there's a reason for that. Kensington has become the most visible and concentrated example of what happens when addiction spirals completely out of control. Walk down Kensington Avenue today, particularly in the area around Somerset Station, and you'll see scenes that are hard to process. People nodding off on their feet, bent at impossible angles in what's known as the Kensington Lean. Tents and makeshift encampments lining the sidewalks. People openly using drugs, sometimes in groups, sometimes alone. The smell of unwashed bodies, trash, and human waste. The sound of arguments, sirens, and the general chaos of a community in crisis. This is what public health officials call an open-air drug market, one of the largest on the East Coast. Dealers operate openly, buyers come from all over the region, and the whole ecosystem of addiction plays out in public view. It's not hidden in back alleys or abandoned buildings, though those exist too. It's right there on the main streets, impossible to ignore or deny. The numbers tell part of the story. Philadelphia as a whole sees over 1,000 overdose deaths every year, and Kensington accounts for a disproportionate share of those deaths. Emergency responders in the area administer Narcan, the overdose reversal drug, multiple times per shift, every single day. Some individual responders have saved hundreds of lives over the course of their careers, and they'll tell you they're barely making a dent. But the crisis goes beyond just overdoses and deaths. Kensington has become a destination for people struggling with addiction from across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and beyond. They come because the drugs are readily available, cheap, and potent. They come because Kensington has developed an entire ecosystem around addiction. Not just dealers, but also informal support networks, knowledge about where to get various services, and a community of people in the same situation. This creates a kind of tragic gravity. Once Kensington became known as a place where people with addiction disorders congregated, more people came. And as more people came, more services oriented toward addiction appeared. Some helpful, some exploitative. The neighborhood became defined by the crisis, which only intensified the crisis further. The drug market itself is sophisticated and ruthless. Dealers use marketing techniques, brand names for their products, special stamps on bags to indicate different strains or qualities. They adapt quickly to law enforcement pressure, using lookouts, runners, and compartmentalized operations. The drugs themselves are increasingly dangerous. Fentanyl has replaced heroin as the primary opioid, and it's being mixed with xylazine, a veterinary sedative known as tranq, that causes horrific wounds that won't heal. Law enforcement has tried various approaches: raids, increased patrols, targeted arrests of dealers, but it's like pushing water uphill. Arrest one dealer and another appears within hours. Shut down one corner and the market moves to another block. The demand is too high, the profit motive too strong, and the underlying conditions that create addiction remain unaddressed. What makes Kensington the center of the crisis isn't just the concentration of addiction and drug dealing, though. It's also the visibility. In many communities, addiction is hidden, behind closed doors, in private homes, in discreet medical facilities. But in Kensington, poverty means people don't have private spaces to use. They don't have homes to go to. So everything happens in public, creating images that shock the conscience and dominate media coverage. This visibility is both a curse and a potential blessing. It's a curse because it stigmatizes the neighborhood and everyone in it. Property values plummet. Businesses won't locate there. Residents who aren't involved in the drug economy still have to navigate these conditions every day. Children walk past people using drugs on their way to school. It's traumatizing and dehumanizing for everyone involved. But the visibility is also a blessing of sorts, because it makes denial impossible. You can't pretend this isn't happening. You can't hide it with statistics or euphemisms. The crisis in Kensington demands attention and action in a way that hidden crises don't. And that attention, if channeled properly, could be the catalyst for real change. The question is, what will we do with that attention? Will we just gawk at the suffering? Will we treat it as a spectacle, a cautionary tale, a problem too big to solve? Or will we recognize it for what it really is, a community in desperate need of comprehensive, sustained, well-funded intervention? Root causes. Here's what Kensington's crisis isn't. It's not about personal moral failure. It's not about people in the neighborhood being inherently weaker or worse than people anywhere else. It's not about a single bad policy or one wrong decision. The crisis in Kensington has deep, interconnected roots. And if we want to solve it, we need to understand all of them. Let's start with economic devastation. We talked about deindustrialization earlier, but it's worth emphasizing just how completely the economic foundation of Kensington collapsed. This wasn't a gradual transition where people could retrain for new jobs. This was economic freefall. Entire industries disappeared, and nothing comparable replaced them. The service economy jobs that replaced manufacturing paid less, offered fewer benefits, and provided less stability. For many people, especially those without advanced education, there simply were no good options left. Poverty creates conditions where addiction thrives. When people lose hope, when they can't see a viable path forward, when every day is a struggle just to survive, that's when substances that offer temporary escape become incredibly appealing. Opioids don't just kill pain in your body, they kill emotional and psychological pain too. For someone living in chronic stress, with no apparent way out of their circumstances, that relief can seem worth any cost. Then there's the healthcare system's role in creating this epidemic. Pharmaceutical companies aggressively marketed opioid painkillers starting in the 1990s, claiming they were safe and non-addictive. Doctors prescribed them freely for everything from major surgery to chronic back pain to dental work. Patients trusted their doctors and took the pills as prescribed. Many became addicted without realizing what was happening. When regulators finally caught on and started restricting prescription opioids, they didn't invest nearly enough in helping the people who were already addicted. So those folks turned to street drugs, heroin at first, and then fentanyl. The medical system created millions of addicts and then essentially abandoned them. In Kensington, which already had high rates of chronic pain due to years of physical labor in factories, the mental health crisis intersects with all of this. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other mental health conditions are both causes and consequences of addiction. Many people in Kensington struggle with untreated mental illness. There aren't enough mental health services, many don't have insurance that covers them, and there's still significant stigma around seeking help. People self-medicate with drugs because it's easier and more accessible than getting proper treatment. Trauma, both individual and community-wide, plays a huge role. Many people struggling with addiction in Kensington have histories of childhood trauma, abuse, violence, and loss. Growing up in an environment of poverty and violence creates what researchers call adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. The more ACEs someone has, the more likely they are to develop addiction later in life. And in Kensington, trauma isn't just historical, it's ongoing. Children growing up there now are accumulating their own ACEs, which means without intervention, the cycle will continue. Housing instability and homelessness both cause and result from addiction. When you're living on the streets or in a tent, staying sober becomes exponentially harder. You're dealing with constant stress, physical discomfort, lack of sleep, and danger. You don't have a safe,